We hope you enjoy The Magicians. 'Tis the Season to be Grim by Rachel Lawson. Introduction. Dance of the Grinches, a song.
Bah humbug, it's Christmas time. When sensible people lose all their money, it's winter time. I hate winter. The ice and snow, the houses aglow, the no parking, the people sing, the traffic jams, the hams, the empty stores, the wreaths on doors. Bah humbug, it's Christmas time. When sensible people lose all their money, it's winter time. Hate winter. The ice and snow, the houses aglow, the no parking, the people sing, the traffic jams, the hams, the empty stores, the wreaths on doors. Bah humbug, it's Christmas time. When sensible people lose all their money, it's winter time. Hate winter. The ice and snow, the houses aglow, the no parking, the people sing, the traffic jams, the hams, the empty stores, the wreaths on doors. Bah humbug, I hate Christmas. Bah humbug, I hate Christmas. Bah humbug, I hate Christmas. Bah humbug.
Chapter 1. The Manchurian Candidate. Christmas is hell. It was a strange day when Blake Alexander found out about this odd case. Everyone at his hospital wanted to decorate the hospital for Christmas drunk on the Christmas cheer. But that was nothing. The Reapers were trying to get the afterlife business in line with fate's decree that they celebrate Christmas with Reapers collecting people as Santa Clauses, which Blake was totally against. To him, it was an anathema. He felt like Scrooge. It was getting so Christmassy, the people at the hospital had stopped calling him Dr. Death on the upside, but on the downside, they called him the Grinch. He was in a bad mood when he visited the police station, which was trimmed for Christmas too. "We have got some paperwork for you to look at, Blake," said his great-uncle, the local sergeant of police. "Great, I love paperwork," said Blake sarcastically. He hated paperwork. "No, you do, that is why we chose you to look at it," said Simon Alexander, thinking he was doing Blake a favour. "What is the paperwork for?" asked Blake. "A murder case," said Simon. "What case?" asked Blake, who was a local coroner. "Tim Wong," said his uncle. "Oh, him! The man who reported to us a foreign government tried to hire him as a Manchurian candidate," Blake said, remembering the case. "Yes, that one," said Simon. "We suspect a person in the shell company who tried to hire him, whose paperwork we confiscated. We think they may have paid for a hitman to kill him." "Who am I working with on this?" asked Blake. "No one, you're on paperwork duty by yourself. We know how much you love doing paperwork," said Simon, smiling, giving him the paperwork in a collection of files. "Damn," Blake muttered under his breath. "I'll leave you to it," Simon said, wandering off. "Blake, I got you a present," the last man Blake wanted to see said, putting a fuzzy red Santa hat on Blake's head. "Great thanks, Gabriel," said Blake, who was so over Christmas. The man was his lawyer. He was a serial pest because he was an idiot. "You are welcome, Blake," the man known as the Masked Chicken said. "What are you doing?" asked Gabriel Drac, the Masked Chicken. "Paperwork," said Blake. "Need help?" asked the chicken. "No," said Blake, who knew the chicken would mess it up or get murdered if he helped him. "Okay, remember I'm here if you need help," said Gabriel, who heard a call for help on the police radio. "I have to go," said the chicken. "Bye, chicken," said Blake, feeling sorry for whoever wanted help. The chicken ran off to the rescue. "Hi, Dad, did the chicken get you too?" said Lance, the superhero, the enchanter. He was Blake's son. Lance wore a blue tux and a mask and a top hat with a Santa hat on it. "Yeah," Blake said. "He did." "I hear you have paperwork to do on the Manchurian Candidate murder. You want help with the case? We can split the paperwork," Lance said. "As long as no one dies," Blake said to his son, who was secretly a serial killer wanted by the police. "No one will die," said Lance, who only killed people for fate. "Thanks," Blake said. "I will split it with you. We are looking for evidence of a payoff for a hit. They think it may be in there." Later, in the realm of the dead, in a gothic, dingy office, sat a skeleton in a Santa suit reading the paperwork. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," the skeleton shouted. In walked a tall, thin human Santa. "Hi, Blake," said the thin Santa. "Hi, Argent," the skeleton said. "I had an idea we should have a birthday party for Jesus. Where is he?" asked Argent. "No, he's a hermit. He won't come," said Blake, who was king of the Grim Reapers. "Oh, what a shame," said Argent, who was fate. There was another knock. "Come in," Blake shouted again. In walked another Reaper in a Santa suit. "The soul you wanted to see is here," said the Reaper, Morton, Blake's secretary. "Show him in, Dad," said Blake. "Come in, Tim," said Blake's dad's soul, the Reaper, Morton. In walked a ghost. "What is going on? Where is this Halloween town? Jack Skellington is everywhere," Tim Wong's ghost said. "This is the afterlife, not a cartoon musical," said Blake. "I heard the skeletons singing," said Tim. "Argent, this is getting crazy," Blake said, exasperated. "It is Christmas," Argent said. "Okay, my name is Jack, welcome to Halloween Town," Blake said exasperatedly. "Blake!" snapped Argent. Morton chuckled. "Who is this ghost?" asked Argent. "A man whose murder case I am working on," said Blake. "Murder is not in the spirit of the season. Morton, send him back to the place he came from," Argent said. Morton did as he was told. "But I need to interview him to find his killers," Blake said. "No, he is not in the season's spirit," Argent said. "But what has his death got to do with anything?" Blake shouted. "Christmas is love, not hate," Argent said. "He died in hate." "Whatever," Blake shouted. Argent heard an off-key singer singing a carol he rushed off to chastise them, leaving Blake arcing blue sparks reading the paperwork to find evidence. Elsewhere, Lance sat in his favourite chair in his home, trawling through the paperwork, as his daughter Christine watched Neighbours on TV loudly. "Turn it down, Christine, I'm helping Granddad solve a murder," shouted Lance, who couldn't think and hated the show. "No, I hate hearing Junior practicing his violin, he is terrible," said Christine. As in the next room, her brother Lance Jr. murdered God rest ye merry gentlemen. The next day, Blake sat in the morgue at Charing Cross Hospital, reading the files on the slabs. Blake was a man, not a skeleton. Now he wore a lab coat, glasses, and looked like a pen pusher. He sat on a chair from his office reading. "Grinch," said an orderly, walking in the room. "Bah, humbug," Blake said, frustrated by the interruption. "We have real work for you," the orderly said, knocking a pile of paperwork off the slab and put a folder in its place. "Hey, this is police work," said Blake. The orderly walked off, not caring. "He's so rude," Blake muttered, looking at the mess. "I'll deal with that later," Blake said, picking up the orderly's file and read it, and wandered off. Upstairs, 5 minutes later. "Hello, you are here for Jack Taylor, right?" "Yes, who are you?" asked Taylor's wife. "Dr. Alexander, I'm here to tell you how your husband is," Blake said. "How is he?" asked Mrs. Taylor. "He's fine, he's waiting for you in his room," Blake said, who was thinking it a prank they usually sent him to tell people someone died. When Blake finished his errand of mercy, he returned to sort out the mess and continue his work. In the process, he found the name of the person who paid for the hit. So confident was he, they were harmless, he went to confront them. Blake went to their home, and was shot and gagged and tied up and was left to die helpless and wanting to kick himself for not telling anyone where he was. Blake was missed. The next day, Lance found the name of the hitman. "Tell me the name of your employer in the Tim Wong hit," a skeleton in a Santa suit demanded. "Jack Skellington?" The hitman laughed. "No, the necromancer," the Reaper said. The necromancer was the name Lance was known as, the serial killer. "Necromancer!" echoed the hitman. "Tell me his name," said Lance. Not only did they give a name, they gave an address. "Where is Blake Alexander?" demanded Lance of the person who shot his father. "Who?" asked the shooter. "Where is he?" demanded Lance. "I don't know who he is," said the shooter. "You shot him," Lance said, reading the shooter's mind. "What have you done with him?" Lance snapped. There was a faint knock on a wall. Lance ran to the wall and found it was a hidden panic room with his near-dead father lying within. He grabbed his father and dematerialized and materialized in Blake's hospital. He was taken to emergency, they removed the bullet, and Lance stayed till he had to leave. Weeks later, Blake got better. The hitman was arrested, but the shooter escaped the country with someone else's passport and disappeared as if they never existed. They thought they were a spy. Chapter 2. God rest ye merry gentlemen. The moon glowed like blood that night. It was an eclipse known as a blood moon that night. When Blake Alexander was at the morgue autopsying what was left of his son, the necromancer's newest victim. The police wanted him as a violent serial killer. He was, in reality, the assassin of fate who was Blake's boss too. "Since when did your victims come in Santa outfits?" asked Blake, who was in a white lab coat with glasses. "Since Argent told me to dress them like that," said a grim Reaper in a Santa suit. "It's sick," said Blake, who was the local coroner. "I have a gift for you," said the necromancer. "Oh, that's nice of you," Blake said. "I saw it and thought that was so you," said the necromancer. Blake was worried it was a prank. The necromancer made a package wrapped in Christmas wrapping paper appear out of thin air and gave it to his dad, who washed and dried his hands. "That's nice of you," said Blake, opening it was in Deject Shop packet. When he saw the picture on the packet, he was depressed. "Thanks, you shouldn't have," Blake moaned. "What is it?" asked his assistant coroner, Dante. Blake passed it to him. Dante laughed. It was a black Christmas t-shirt which read, "I hate Christmas" on it. Also on it was a smiling green Grinch head in a Santa hat. "It's perfect," said Dante. "Where's the Grinch? I need him," said a rude orderly pushing past the Reaper. The Reaper laughed. "You wanted Blake," said the necromancer. "You've got to see this t-shirt, Jack. You'll love it. It's Blake's," said Dante, showing it to the rude orderly. "It's perfect," said the orderly, laughing. "I got him a present too," said the orderly, passing Blake a parcel. "Oh, thank you. You shouldn't have," said Blake, seeing it was a soft, singing, dancing Grinch toy that sang the Grinch song. The hospital staff called him the Grinch, and his son knew it. "Are you a caroler?" Jack asked of the Reaper. "No, why?" asked the Reaper. A troop of similarly dressed Grim Reapers wandered into the room with a slim, human-looking Santa. They were singing, "God rest ye merry gentlemen." "Where did you get those carolers? They are great," said Jack. Blake was depressed. They were his Reapers. They had been press-ganged into Christmas. Caroling others were dressed like that, collecting souls. "Argent, your friends are amazing. They look just like Jack Skellington." Jack Taylor, the thin Santa's friend, said, "I borrowed some Grim Reapers from my friend Mortimer, the Reaper King, to cheer up people in the hospital with a carol concert," said Argent. "That is so sweet of you," said Jack Taylor to his friend, then added, "Isn't it Grinch?" Jack said to Blake, who was secretly Mortimer the Reaper King. Jack didn't know it though. "Why ask him? He's just a stick in the mud at Christmas," said Lance, teasing his dad. Later at the local police station, Blake was there to talk to the police about the oddly Christmassy victim of the necromancer. He wasn't sure what to say. While he was there, he met his friend, the masked chicken, his lawyer. "Hi, Blake," said the chicken. "Hi, Gabriel," replied Blake. Gabriel reached into a bag and pulled out a fuzzy plush Santa hat and put it on Blake's head, to Blake's horror. "Merry Christmas, Blake," said Gabriel. "Thank you, Gabriel," said Blake politely, even if he wanted to throw the hat back at his friend. "You're welcome, Blake," replied the drunk on the Christmas spirit chicken. "Excuse me, I have to see my uncle," said Blake. "It's all right, Blake," said the chicken, smiling, letting Blake go with a goodbye. Blake wandered into his uncle, the policeman in charge of the station's office. He was in a long, floppy, fuzzy green and red elf hat. He looked depressed too. "The chicken gets you too," said Blake, chuckling. "Yes," Simon Alexander said sadly. "He loves Christmas," moaned Blake. "Yes, he does," said Simon. "Why was the victim dressed as Santa Claus?" "It's Christmas," said Blake. "I know, hard to not know around here," said Simon. Blake looked out the office window and saw more Santa Reapers caroling. "Mortimer must really like Christmas. He sent us a Christmas present, 7 skeletons are caroling," said Simon. "Too bad he couldn't send serial killers, his son instead for us. It would be more appreciated." Blake looked outside and saw his son, the necromancer, was among the skeletal carolers. He couldn't resist rubbing the police's nose in it, but Blake didn't tell him. "Yes, why couldn't he do that?" Blake moaned. Later in the afterlife, Mortimer was dressed as Santa in a warmly decorated, tinsel-laden, dingy little wooden office doing a naughty and nice list, as Argent commanded it be called, instead of judgments. It made Blake feel sick. It was so Christmassy down there. He felt it was good, he was just a skeleton, and he felt so out of sorts. He couldn't even listen to his music, as his boss, Argent, had decreed it not Christmassy. So, in his office, he heard cheesy Christmas carols vetted and approved by Argent only. It was making him sicker. When Argent, the thin Santa, burst in the room accusingly. "What?" said Mortimer, looking up at him. "You need brandy," said Argent, making a glass of it appear in his hand, and he handed it to Mortimer. "But I don't drink," said Mortimer. "You can and must, it's Christmas," said Argent. "Okay, it's your party," said Mortimer. "Salute," Mortimer said, and drank. He ended up in a wet Santa suit. "Why are you covered in drink that's not in the spirit of the season?" said Argent. "I said I don't drink. I'm a skeleton." "What did you expect to happen?" moaned Mortimer. "Dry up, you have a job," said Argent. "What do you want me to do now?" said Mortimer, casting a drying spell. "I want to report a drunk Santa at T-Mart, Charing Cross," a police receptionist heard on a phone call. "I'll send a local policeman in the area to help you," the receptionist said. Later, the police arrived at the mall. "You should be ashamed of yourself," a policeman said to the Santa who was shouting. He wasn't drunk at a parent who he was arguing with. "Why?" asked Blake, who was dressed as Santa. "Why did you think you could drink and play Santa?" said the policeman. "My lousy boss made me do it. He made me drink and act as a shop Santa, but I'm not drunk, I just have drink on me," shouted Blake. "Why are you so angry?" asked the policeman, taking Blake under arrest. "Mortimer Death, you are released. Someone called Argent paid your bail," a policeman said, releasing him. Mortimer Death was wanted by the police because he missed his court hearing. Simon was livid when he saw the wanted poster for Mortimer. He thought he could have identified the father to catch the killer son. But the picture was of a grumpy-looking, disheveled human living Santa, so he thought he would never be found. Chapter 3. The Grinch returns. Christmas carols rang around the photo with Santa area. A child wandered up to Santa Claus and sat on his lap. "What do you want, little boy?" moaned Santa, who sounded like he would rather be somewhere else. Nearby, Santa's adult son watched him joyfully. "I cannot believe you got Blake playing Santa again. He hates Christmas," said Santa's wife Angela to her stepson. "It wasn't me. It was Argent, a Santa in the Santa's agency, was murdered. He's undercover as Santa to find the killer," said Santa's son, Lance. Lance left his stepmother and walked over to his father, shouting, "Grinch, are you trying to steal Christmas again?" Santa moaned and tossed off the child, ignoring him. "What do you want, boy, to kill Christmas too?" Santa moaned at his serial killer son. "The Grinch has to go feed the dead. Come back later," said Lance, glaring with eyes like fire at the nervous, crying children who wanted to sit on Santa's lap. "Congratulations, you've killed Christmas," moaned Santa, feeling pity for the scared children. "Ignore the bad man, he's getting coal for Christmas." "I'm not going there, Dad," said his son, knowing giving coal was unwoke, and he could have said many things, but didn't. "Oh, come with me, you brat," said Santa, dragging his son away. Later, in a furniture store, Santa walked in with his son looking at the sofas. "What are you looking for?" asked Lance. "A settee for the waiting room outside my office in the afterlife," said the Santa who was in reality the king of the Grim Reapers. "Why aren't you looking in a second-hand shop?" asked the son. "I'm looking for something new, not a haunted house special," said Santa, half an hour later. "This one is so you. It's black stuffy and has your name on it," said Lance, seeing one called Mortimer, the Santa's Reaper name. "Ho, ho, ho," Mortimer said humorlessly. "Come with us, Santa," said a voice behind them. "I just wanted to buy a settee. Since when was it a crime, Santa buying furniture with his son?" said Mortimer, seeing the voice was a policeman's. "He's drunk or insane," said the other policeman, trying to take Mortimer in physically. "Are you invisible, boy?" asked Santa. "Yes," said Lance, the enchanter who was. "Oh, great. Let me go, I only want to shop," said Santa, trying to get away from the grip of the policeman to explain himself. "He's resisting capture," said the second policeman, pepper-spraying Santa, who blindly fought to clean his eyes. The other officer pulled out a taser and shot Santa. Mortimer arced electrically. Being a creature of electricity as Mortimer was, he shorted out and collapsed to the floor. Meanwhile, his invisible son laughed insanely, amused by the scene. Santa awoke in a cell at the police station, full of drunk Santas. "Tell the guy in charge here Santa wants a word with him," shouted Mortimer to a policeman on guard duty. "Why?" asked the policeman. "Because I say so, Constable Carmichael," said Mortimer gruffly. Later, the man in charge of the station, Sergeant Alexander Drax, visited the cells to see what Santa wanted, finding a cell full of them. "I'm here, so who is Santa?" the sergeant asked. "I am," said Mortimer, who was pushed aside by a drunk Santa. "No, I am," said the pushy Santa. "Are you blind?" "I am Santa," slurred another. "Humans," grumbled Mortimer and disappeared into thin air. "I bet that was Santa," said the sergeant. Chapter 4. A very grim Christmas. Blake Alexander was feeling like death warmed up as he stood autopsying his son, the assassin, the necromancer's latest victim as coroner. His son had dressed him up in tinsel and a Christmas outfit by order of their boss, Fate, a Christmas nut. Blake ran over to the sink and vomited. It was not the body that made him sick. It was the outfit that disturbed him. It was Christmas that made him sick. "Grinch, are you all right?" asked Jack, Blake's least favorite co-worker at the hospital where the morgue was. "Yes, Jack. I don't know what came over me," Blake said. "I need your help," said Jack. "I think I need a break from work here. I'll help you. Just let me clean up a bit," said Blake. Blake cleaned up. His assistant coroner, Dante, was called and he finished the autopsy. Blake went with Jack, thinking he'd be told to do a chore as usual. Blake was taken to an empty room. "Where is my patient?" asked Blake. "Patients?" said Jack. "What patients?" "Why do you need me?" asked Blake. "We need your help," said Jack. Blake frowned. "How?" asked Blake. "We need a Santa," said Jack. "Do I look like a short, old, fat man?" asked Blake, who was tall, thin, and young-looking. "Well, no, but we have an elf," said Jack. "Then why do you need a Santa?" Blake asked. "He won't go," said Jack. "What? Okay, who is he?" Blake asked. "Your son," said Jack. "My son?" Blake asked. "Lance," said Jack. Is anyone hurt? Blake asked. No, he is just killing Christmas, Jack said. Why did you let him in? Asked Blake, who was changing magically into a Santa suit. He insisted he was told to help the children. He said he was sent to spread cheer, said Jack. Take me to him, Blake said. He was. Santa's here, said Jack, showing Blake into the room the necromancer was playing elf in. Lance, the necromancer, looked nervous seeing Santa walk in the room. Sorry, kids, the elf needs to go with Santa to set up Santa's sleigh, said Blake. The kids wouldn't let Santa leave without telling him what they wanted for Christmas. Lance insisted he stay. I want a dog, said the last one. Remember to be good. Santa will judge you, said Lance, who was notably drunk. Blake grabbed the hand of the drunk elf and said, Rudolph needs feeding. Come with me, my little elf, said Blake to his son, disgusted. No, said the elf. Blake dragged him out of the room. Lancelot, Blake snapped when he was out of the room. Lance was so plastered he didn't recognize his dad. Have I been naughty, Santa? Asked Lance. Have you been naughty? I was autopsying your latest victim, and you went drunk as a skunk to a hospital and killed Christmas. No, you wouldn't do that now, would you? Blake said. Santa, said the confused Lance. It's me, you plastered psycho, said Blake, disgusted. Dad? Asked Lance. Yes, said Blake, later in the afterlife. Argent, how dare you send the necromancer to go on your fool's errand? We were lucky the man who looked after him was a friend of mine, or the police would have him now, snapped Blake, the king of the Grim Reapers, confronting Fate, Blake, and Lance's boss. I didn't get him drunk, said the Fate Argent. He knew it was a fool's errand, so he went to the pub and got on the beers for courage, said Blake. He got drunk on his own, said Argent. Days later, in a big shopping centre, Blake sat trying to look jolly in a Santa suit. Santa, I want a new car, said an elf jokingly sitting on Santa's lap. Have you been a good boy? Asked Santa, knowing the elf knew he hadn't. I had to try, said the elf, laughing. Blake frowned. Let the real children have a go, boy, Blake said to his son Lance. Lance laughed. Whatever you say, Dad, Lance replied. A small boy sat on Blake's knee. What do you want? Asked Blake. The child was cute. Even Lance thought he was nice. A real Santa, the child said, pulling off the white beard of the apparently young Santa, then hitting Blake hard in the guts. The other children cried, seeing the fake Santa. Lance laughed. He's on the naughty list, Lance said to the winded Blake. Are you all right, Dad? Blake got up. He definitely is, said Blake, the judge of the dead. Lance smiled. I think we should call it a day, said Blake, seeing the crying children. They quit their jobs as Santa and elf there. A day later at the police station. The place was full of cheer for the new season. Blake felt slightly green under the gills when a grim reaper walked up to him. What are you doing here, boy, committing harakiri? Asked Blake, recognizing him. The police would try to arrest Lance if they recognized him. No, I'm here with the choir, said Lance the Reaper. There was a choir of grim reapers who came to the police station every year at Christmas dressed as Santas and singing festive songs. You be careful, said Blake to his son. Lance took off his Santa hat and put it on his dad's head, knowing how much Blake hated Christmas. You wear it, said Lance. No, it's yours, said the King of Death, feeling even more sick, trying to remove the hat, but he couldn't. Lance had enchanted the hat, so it would stay on his father's head. Ha, 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 said the unamused Blake. Take off the enchantment. It's not coming off until after Christmas, said Lance, laughing. He wandered off to join the choir, hatless. No, wait, boy, pleaded Blake as he left. Blake, can I have a word with you? Asked the sergeant in charge of the police station, Blake's great-uncle, who also looked young, like Blake and Lance. What is it, Uncle Ray? Asked Blake. I need a word with you, said Reynard Alexander. Okay, said Blake. Why did you send the necromancer to your hospital drunk? There could have been a bloodbath, accused the policeman. I didn't. It was fate he sends us out to play Santa there every year. I was busy this year, so he sent Lance as an elf, said Blake. Why was he drunk? Asked Ray. Lance was nervous, so he went to the pub, said Blake. I'd not send him anywhere with children, said Ray. I don't, it was our boss, said the irritable Blake. Nice hat, said Ray. It was a gift, said Blake, watching a hatless reaper singing with annoyance. I like this time of year, the choir is good, especially the one without a hat. He's my favourite, Ray said, watching Lance, not recognising him. That one is a pain in the neck, moaned Blake. Chapter 5. Snow and Magic. I hate this place. It's cold, wet, and the time has gone crazy, moaned a grumpy foreigner in another country he'd not seen before. It's New York in winter, you old grouch. It is another country, of course. The time and weather are crazy. We aren't in Melbourne, said his son. He's just not used to travelling by plane, and it is summer where we are from, said the grumpy man's grandfather, making excuses for his grandson. I hate all this white stuff too, moaned the grumpy man. Few do like it, replied the grandfather, who'd lived in New York for a spell before Blake was born, in the temperate climes of Melbourne, Australia, where it seldom snowed, so that he couldn't take the weather on a deep, snowy winter's day in New York. I hate this place. Even my bones are frozen, moaned Blake, the king of the Grim Reapers, currently trapped in his inconvenient human form. Go bury yourself in the snow, deadhead, snapped his son, already fed up with the endless complaining. Blake glared back at him. He'd expected as much from his son. They never got on well. They continued walking down the street when a group of people approached them. Seeing that Blake looked sad, they wanted to cheer him up. They were a choir of carolers. They sang, "We wish you a Merry Christmas," hoping but failing to cheer Blake up. His grandfather, Fred, was touched by their gesture and the Christmas spirit. He enjoyed their singing. Blake, on the other hand, wasn't. "Can you go away and wish Shoo a Merry Xmas somewhere else?" "Shoo," moaned Blake. They mispronounced wish you as wish shoo. It grated on Blake's ears. The choir moved on, insulted. "That was rude, boy," snapped Fred, feeling for the choir. "The Grinch hates Christmas carols," said Lakelandite, the son of Blake. Blake hated being called the Grinch. They continued walking on in the night as Blake, who was still moody, brooded as they walked the streets on their way. "Why are we walking?" Lakelandite asked. Blake took offence at the Christmas decorations in the streets. The snow floated ethereally in the air. Fred was enchanted. "Trains aren't safe," Fred said, lying. The truth was, he wanted to walk. "Why?" asked Lakelandite. "Too many dangerous people on the trains," Fred said. "I'll protect you," said Lakelandite. "I know we are protecting them from you. That's why we aren't on the train," Fred snapped. Blake and Fred knew Lakelandite killed dangerous people, so it was too dangerous in case it got dangerous. Lakelandite scowled. "True," Blake agreed. "You would agree with him. You are him," hissed Lakelandite at Blake, who was a time traveller who accidentally became his own grandfather. "What does that matter?" Fred said, frowning. They were the same man, 1,000 years apart. He wasn't human, nor could he stay dead, unlike most of his other people, who were long-lived but stayed dead. The two were more like friends than one man, not that many knew that they were anything more than a grandfather and grandson, an emperor, Fred, and a fallen emperor, Blake, the king of death. Blake was seen as a throwback of his grandfather, not his actual grandfather. "Oh, look, they have a stage show about you, Dad," said Lakelandite, seeing the theatre with a sign outside. Lakelandite pointed at it, and Blake grimaced, seeing it. It was A Christmas Carol, the musical. "I'm not Scrooge," Blake said awkwardly, knowing he was like Scrooge. "Yeah, right, Grinch," Lakelandite said. "I love a good Christmas carol," Fred the Christmas Nut said cheerfully. Blake glared at Fred, his older self. Sometime later, during their trip from the hotel, Blake grew bored and grumpier. "Are we there yet?" moaned Blake. "No," said Fred. "Why don't we teleport there?" asked Blake, depressed. "Walking is good for us. It puts a rose in your cheek," said Fred cheerfully. No, that's the temperature, Rudolph, moaned Blake, shivering, looking at Fred's red nose. He was cold too, Blake noticed. Soon the crowds thickened and candles and more Christmas revelers appeared. Blake felt worse. Fred's heart lightened and he felt slightly nervous. The air was full of carols ringing brightly. Then Blake saw his nemesis. All this fuss just to turn on a light, really? Blake huffed. It makes people happy, Blake. Smile. Come on, look happy, Fred said. Blake put on a fake smile which looked fake. They walked to a giant tree and met the mayor. He greeted them and introduced them, handing Fred a switch. Fred made a speech, then turned on the switch and smiled charmingly. The crowd cheered as the giant Christmas tree blazed to life, thousands of lights sparkling in the snowy night. Blake froze. His eye twitched, his jaw clenched. "Oh no," Fred whispered. "He's going to blow." "I hate this," Blake hissed. "I hate this stupid tree. I hate this stupid holiday. I hate..." A blue spark snapped off his fingertips. The lights on the tree flickered. Another spark. The lights brightened unnaturally, humming like an overworked generator. "Blake," Fred warned. "Breathe." "I am breathing," Blake shouted. The entire tree went pop, then bang, then erupted into a shower of sparks as the lights shorted out. A moment later, a small flame licked up the branches. The crowd screamed. Fred sighed. "'Tis the season to be grim." "The Grinch has stolen Christmas," said Lakelandite, shocked, looking at the burning symbol of Christmas. As the firemen tried to put out the tree, Fred stood watching the panicking crowds. Blake was feeling guilty and out of it, wanting to die. Fred looked at Blake, then the tree, and screamed in frustration. Chapter 6. Grinch's Guide to Ruin Christmas, a song.
Leave our children a lump of coal. Shun those merry of soul. Complain the weather is cold as hell. Remove the hammer from the Christmas bell. Go rent Santa's suits. Put on a pair of black boots. Will you take a check? No, just a card, what the heck? Go rob a Santa for clothes. That is not like Santa to use such oaths. Run away from Santa. Maybe I'll be safer trying this in Atlanta. Leave all children a lump of coal. Shun those merry of soul. Complain the weather is cold as hell. Remove the hammer from the Christmas bell. Go rent Santa's suits. Put on a pair of black boots. Will you take a check? No, just a card, what the heck? Go rob a Santa for clothes. That is not like Santa to use such oaths. Run away from Santa. Maybe I'll be safer trying this in Atlanta. Leave all children a lump of coal. Shun those merry of soul. Complain the weather is cold as hell. Remove the hammer from the Christmas bell. Go rent Santa's suits. Put on a pair of black boots. Will you take a check? sanity you such oaths. Run away from Santa. Maybe I'll be safer trying this in Atlanta.